Welcome to the Blue Room Weekly, and it's me, Warren, hosting tonight, and I've got Dave with me tonight as well. Dave, just before we go on to discuss a couple of things that I've got planned that I wanted to discuss with you tonight, in the last sort of couple of hours, I got the notification on my phone that Leeds United supposedly have been given a lot of money to spend over the summer with the aim of trying to keep themselves in the Premier League and not repeating what the bottom three sides have done this season in the league. And it's been reported that they've got some interest in Beto. And my initial reaction to it was one of, yeah, get rid of him, sell him. I've been a fan in it with his recent performances in terms of how hard he's worked, his attitude to the club, and that sort of thing. And we know he's not of the ability of some of the previous strikers we've had in the past. Certainly, someone like a Lukaku, but I think he's made an impact since David Moyes came. So my initial reaction was, yeah, sell him. Let's get some money in. However, on a bit of reflection, I'm a bit 50-50 about it now, more because I heard you lads talking on Blue Monday, about the fact that we've already got 13 players out of contract. We can't lose all of them because there's just too big a rebuild. And if we lost someone like Beto as well, is that just a player too far? Just your initial thoughts on the interest or supposed interest from Leeds and what you think the outcome will be.
Well, I mean, it's a surprise immediately that they be looking towards going for him. Clearly, they've been given some courage from somewhere to be mentioning, or that to be sort of leaking out into the press. I would like to think in a perfect world for us, it would be the club trying to sell him and move him on anyway for the most amount of money they can get, because I wouldn't expect that we'd be able to get anywhere near 30 million given what we paid for him and given we've seen the output from him. Despite that's notwithstanding what you said there, because he's had some crucial games for us this season. He's won us some games this season. Don't get me wrong about that, but he's not the permanent striker that you want as our forward, is he? He's not somebody you want. If you were to be told that he'd be playing 30 odd games for us up front next season, you wouldn't be happy. I'm pretty sure almost every fan would have had an issue with that. It's an interesting one from Leeds, and I think Leeds are the first club that's come up for the last couple of years who will properly hit this hard to stay in the Premier League. I've said for a while, Leeds are a Premier League side to all intents and purposes, aside from the fact that they've been not good enough to stay in the Premier League. The club itself are one of the top 20 in the country. I don't think there's any denial there from anybody. But in regard to ourselves here, you need to play your cards in the right way here. You don't want to jump in at the deep end. Now, we know we're going to be spending some money in the summer. We know we're going to be trying to get targets brought into the club, probably for the first time with any sort of leeway budget-wise for quite some time. That doesn't mean you start shopping and make it look like a supermarket sweep. You don't want to go ballistic because you've got a few quid to be able to go and spend here that we haven't had in the past. And with that in regard, it's all about time. And for me, that I think is the most crucial thing. You can't go and get rid of, firstly, a striker if you haven't got one either waiting in the wings and it's almost completely done, or it's already been done, or if you've kept Calvert-Lewin. And this has been the narrative in the last few weeks now as we approach the end of his contract. It's been in most of our podcasts talking about Calvert-Lewin, and the immediate reaction from many fans is he's not good enough. You've got to let him go. He's past it. His contract's gone out of business. His attitude's been all of these different things that people have spoken about Calvert-Lewin. But what I would say about that is, if you're going to get rid of Beto and make that decision early doors in the transfer window, and you're going to get rid of Dominic Calvert-Lewin, you have to have players in place. You can't do that. The naivety to do that is ridiculous, and it would feel very much like the sort of thing we've done in the past, like we went under Machiri and bought about 500 number 10s, or attacking midfield players. Everton can't do that. Everton have got to get an efficient number 9 there. Now that's going to be an issue hard enough in the difficulty in itself, because everybody's going to be looking for the number 9. Everybody's going to be looking for a Premier League striker that can bang it in 15 goals a season. Now, that is why Beto, this is an anomaly, I think, for us. It's all about the right time. If you're going to sell him, it needs to be decided quickly whether that's what we want, if the right amount comes in, of course, as well. There's those few mitigating circumstances in and around it, but the main thing for me is Everton need to, in a way, have a striker who are on their books constantly in case things fall apart around it. Just have that little security net, if you get what I mean. So if it is a sale that we're letting Beto go, get Calvert-Lewin signed up with a contract. If it's Calvert-Lewin leaving, which looks like it's edging towards, then you can't let Beto go until you've got a replacement. So I know I've gone the long way around of explaining that, but I hope you sort of get what I mean there.
Yeah, no, I think the last few weeks of the whispers coming out of certain outlets and different media is it's edging more to Calvert-Lewin staying, and I think certainly 3-4 months ago that just seemed like it wasn't a thing on the table at all. It was almost a dead cert that he was leaving, and I remember like you said, I'd gone on record as saying that when Beto had that purple patch, I said he's kind of created a situation for himself, Beto, where he is the main striker at the club. And, granted, Calvert-Lewin was injured and, Broja was still coming back from injury and Schmidt was the same. So he was maybe at times the only striker at the club. But I made the argument that the way he performed and he was scoring goals, that I think even if all four strikers were fit, I wouldn't necessarily have someone over Beto during that period. Obviously, as we go further into the season, and I think Saturday's game and the City game, and to a degree the Arsenal game as well, I think we've seen the deficiencies in this squad, and it's understandable that we need to improve and we have to improve. And the squad, if we keep it like it was, is only going to materialise a bottom middle table finish at best. So we know we need to improve, and I think as well as Beto did, he has gone into that bracket now for me of somebody who would maybe do a good job for Leeds, in stabilising them as a Premier League club with their ambitions to stay as a Premier League club and not get relegated again. And then it's a chance for Everton to move forward. But I totally agree that it's an interesting one in the sense that if what we hear, that Calvert-Lewin will sign this new deal, I'd be for it. It's not a case of he's crap, he's this, he's that, we need to get rid of it, we need to sell it. It's like you said, we've got to have the numbers in, and it'd be ridiculous, because Everton have done this before in the past. It'd be ridiculous to sell one of your strikers and then find out your striker who's out of contract then goes, well, I'm leaving as well. We've gone from having two strikers to then potentially having to spend 60, 70 million on another two, where you could keep one, or you could have. So I think it's going to be. I think Everton's hand might be dealt depending on what Calvert-Lewin says. I get the picture and I get the feeling in Moyes that he does rate him and he would like him as part of his squad in some way. Whereas I think maybe towards Beto, he may let him leave. But do you think Leeds would be a good fit for someone like Beto? I mean, not that that's any of our business or interest, but
yeah,
I don't know. Do you think? I suppose what I'm trying to say is, some people do turn their nose up at him, and I don't think he is strong enough, like you said earlier, to lead the line for 30 games over the season. But he scored again at the weekend. He's got better statistics than Calvert-Lewin this season, and albeit I know Calvert-Lewin's had injury trouble again. But is this a guy that could come back to haunt us?
Yeah, he absolutely is. And I think he's the type of player you'd underestimate at your peril. He's the type of player that you think, you let him go, he'll come back to Goodison and maybe score a couple for, not Goodison, of course, Bramley-Moore. Come to Bramley-Moore and bag a couple of goals with Leeds, and you'll be like, what on earth have we done letting him go? And he'll score 15 goals in a season. I think there are various things in and around every player we've got when you criticise them and everything they've got around them. So I do look at Beto and think, well, if he had the right sort of services in and around him, would he do better than what he does? And I think the answer is yes. You'd say that about every single player, wouldn't you? You'd say that about Calvert-Lewin if you've got the service in for him. If when Calvert-Lewin's been at his best, you think of McNeil at his peak. You think of players that are able to get to the ball into him in the box. He's decent on his feet. He's decent in the air. These things need to be remembered about Calvert-Lewin, of course, because it's very easy for us all to sit here and saying he's been garbage and he doesn't care about being at Everton for quite some time now, because he's been way off when he was at his peak at us a couple of years ago. So that goes in the same direction of Beto, really. That's why I think that he's done a lot better than we all thought. I think we need to be honest about that. And he's done it in a way that I don't think many of us thought he would. The goal he scored the same kind of goal half a dozen times. And the thing that goes in my mind is, if you remember back to Brentford away, he had 2 opportunities where he tried to score that exact same goal, the exact same goal that everyone should be thinking of. He did it against Spurs at home. He did it against Liverpool. The main one in your mind will be Liverpool when he scores that goal, where he opens his body and just slots it underneath the goalkeeper on his left-hand side.
Leicester as well. He did it a couple of times against Leicester, and the style you're on about, he scored one like that against Leicester as well.
And he's a one-trick pony, but it's worked. It's worked. Now, you can either go, one of 2 directions here and think, well, that's all he got in his locker, or the other one is, well, he's not getting enough service anyway to be able to do something different. I don't think he's any good in the air. His control, it leaves a lot to be desired anyway, and that's kind to him, isn't it? But you think with Leeds, they're a different outfit to Everton. I've watched them a couple of times this season, and it's good to see a different side coming back up, who I don't think will be, backs against the wall and trying to just get goalless matches and clean sheets and just scoring the odd goal and scrap it here or there. I actually think they've got a manager in Farker who's decent, and he's got Premier League experience as well.
Well, there's interesting rumours that he might not be part of the Leeds setup next season. I saw a wild rumour the other day linking Mourinho with Leeds, from quite, if I remember rightly, quite a respectable sort of source as well. So whether or not that
you wouldn't, these things come from nowhere, don't they? I mean, look at what's going on with over in Turkey. It seems like a soap opera over there at times, doesn't it? And look at the thing you've pointed to with all of this is Carlo Ancelotti ended up as Everton's manager. Now, if you can beat that, then you're in the realms of saying Mourinho at Leeds. You're in the realms of saying, I don't know, Klopp going to Arsenal, or something like that. Really, where you think
it's not out of the realms of possibility, is it? That you could see him doing that. And I think I don't want to turn this into a Leeds United weekly by any stretch, but I think that it's Mourinho himself come out and said he wants to work with maybe a lower league or lower end Premier League club and try and build them up. And I just think that it seems that there's cogs in place that are spinning now and starting to turn with regards to look, all the transfer hype and everything, as soon as we, wind down to the end of the season, is going to hype up and over the summer as well. But I just, from Everton's point of view and Everton's benefit, I think, like we sort of said, if there's replacements lined up, I think I'll probably accept it. And I think I'll probably, thanks Beto, you've done great. And he'd go with our best wishes, of course he would. But I think that for all the praise I've given him during that purple patch, I think that for us to progress, we need better players than him, technically, don't we?
Yeah, you do. Yeah,
and that's what it boils down to, really.
Yeah, that's the bottom line of it all, really. I think, for the first 10 minutes we've spoken here, sort of skirted around a little bit, but that is the bottom line of it all. That he's done as well as he could. He's done some crucial things for us, but you do get to a point where you're like, well, thanks for everything you've done, but we're going in a different direction here. You say it in a polite way to him, which I'm sure to be, I don't know. I guess there's a high percentage of fans who just say, "Listen, go." They wouldn't give him any sort of respect towards him. I can see where that comes from, given how much we've paid on him, and given
that's not his fault, is it? That's not his fault that we paid the money we have.
It's not, because me or you. I'm not seeing you play footy, and I'm sure he's a pretty good player. But no, if you get offered 30 million quid to go to a Premier League side, you're not going to say no. And that's what happens with him. That's what happens with footballers. It's a Thelwell effort, isn't it? As well, he's gone and got him. And look at what's happened to his career. He's already gone to Rangers, or he's on his verge of going to Rangers when the season ends. You get to a position like that, you start thinking, well, something's gone wrong here. And unfortunately, Beto's in that list. You've gone to spend that much money on a player that is not a Premier League quality striker. He's done crucially well for us at times. So that I think you've hit the nail on the head there. It's shake hands, nice one, mate. Best of luck where you go on, and then we go and look at what we essentially need. Somebody who's got Premier League quality, and then look at building in and around them, and that's the right way we should be going, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think it'll all, it's just something that's come out today. We may still have him as an Everton player next season. Moyes may still want to have someone of his ilk around the squad, but I think I certainly wouldn't be too emotional, should we say, if he left. But speaking of emotions, Dave, I've got to talk about Saturday to a degree. I don't want to go over the results and the match, but I think one of the things I've noticed in the past few days is the ramping up of videos, should we say, that have been online that Everton have put out of Goodison. And I know I listened again to you lads on Monday, and I know yourself and Roger were talking about the idea of sentiments and how, yes, the ground is this, the ground is that, but it's time to move on. And look, I completely agree. I think for me, though, I have to admit, I got very emotional on Saturday, and it's not my last game at Goodison. I'm fortunate enough that I will be able to go to the Southampton game. But at the end of the game, I thought, I don't usually stick around too long at the end of the games. I'm normally, clap the team off or whatever, and then, head for the exits. But I just decided to take a little bit of it in on Saturday, and, because obviously the second to last game, and I thought, goes without saying, all the display and everything beforehand, I think it was the finest that Goodison's ever looked. And, it's been said all week, but we're going to throw our name into it again from this show. I think the 1878 did an immense job with what they set up. I loved the ticker tape. I think that should be something that could be hopefully more of a regular thing. So just think things like that add. It's very old school. It reminds me a bit of not that I was born then or remember it, but the 78 World Cup in Argentina, and that was very ticker tape then. And I just found it a very old school thing for an old school ground. But as I said, at the end of the match, I stood in my seat and I just took it all in. A bit like the video that Everton put out where everyone was just taking it all in. And I turned round and there was a couple, they must have been 30s, 40s, whatever they were, and they were just stood at the back and they were just sort of holding and cuddling each other. And they were just sobbing. They were just absolutely sobbing, the pair of them. And I inferred from that it must have been their last game. Now, at this point, Dave, I must admit, I'd had a few apple juices and lemonades inside me, so I was a little bit emotional anyway myself, shall we say. But it just set me off. It really set me off because I was sobbing then for about an hour afterwards, because it just hit me that it's coming to an end and it's a lot of people's, last game or last opportunity. And I think all the videos that have been put out this week are absolutely fantastic. The 1878 themselves put a piano version of Zed Cars with a montage of the ground. I thought Everton's video, I don't know if you've seen it or everyone has seen it, I'm sure they have. It's been online and gone sort of semi-viral with Evertonians as the all-access video that the club put out. And then the last minute and a half of it was just filming supporters taking everything in with just like silence behind it. And again, and I'm finding every time I watch a video, Dave, I feel myself getting more and more emotional. I've said to people, I don't know how I'm going to cope. I don't know how I'm going to cope with the Southampton game. And I listen, I listen, and I think what you said on Monday, to a degree, a lot of it was correct, what you and Roger were saying. And I think that Everton do need to move away from being a sentimental club that look back rather than looking forward. And I totally get all that and I totally agree. But I think if there is ever a time to get emotional and to get that idea of sentiment, it's now with this last game approaching. How do you think you'll be on that last game? But also, what have you made as well of all the videos coming out? Because as I say, I think I need to have sometimes a lie down after I watch a couple of them. It just starts me up and gets me going.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're referring back to what we were speaking about on Blue Monday there, and I don't know. I think thinking back on it, a couple of things that I said have probably been lost in translation a little bit. Certainly with what you've taken from what I said there, and that's not me sort of backtracking on what I said. But I think Goodison has the time and the place. It has its time and it has its place. She has her time. She has her place in the final game of the season. This season, everything that goes on around it. I notice obviously, and probably something else we speak about, maybe a touch upon. You can get you can actually get your season ticket, your seat.
Yeah.
That's by the by, given the fact you've got to pay 90 quid for it. But anyway, given the fact that Goodison still needs the send off that it deserves. Everton are great at the emotional side of stuff. Everton are great at putting packages together, pictures, photography, all of that stuff. Everton, if you're given Champions League titles, Everton win it every season because they are immense at doing that sort of thing. Now, saying goodbye to it, I've found difficult because anyone who listens to us, who's listened to us since I started this, which is what we're approaching 14 years ago when I started the Blue Room, and I am an overly emotional person for my sins, and with Everton that's very much a big part of it. Too much so, in fact. I mean, I think I've lost close friends to me who I've been overly emotional about Everton. And they've not wanted to speak to me about football anymore. But obviously, it's a big part of our lives there. So if you don't want to talk about football, then I'm probably not a close friend to you, if you get what I mean, other than family, and and I feel that way with Everton. As much as I've tried to clamp myself down a little bit and think, well, we've known this for ages now. We've known this for 8 years, 9 years since the stadium got announced. I think that it's more of a realization thing that this is coming to an end, because you think back to the countdown that you started perhaps at the start of this season, all the way to where we are now. Oh, there's 5 games left, there's 4 games left, and it's taken
coming
for
around
granted.
quick, hasn't it?
Yeah, exactly. That's it. You do sort of take it for granted because you think, perhaps if you're thinking, well, I'm going to stand and look at it properly, I'm going to get 1,000,001 photos, I'm going to do whatever it is that you feel is the best way you can take away what you do from Everton. Yet you think, oh, the next game, this is the last time it can be the next game. And yet it's still that emotion that you've got attached to the place that continues to grow and grow and grow upon yourself. And I feel that when that ridiculous Sunday kickoff comes about, I don't think you'll see a dry eye in the crowd there. And I think that the club itself means different things to a lot of us. I think to me, certain aspects of your life, I mean, it probably, I don't know, maybe it is the time to go quite deep on these things, but Everton have been in a position in my life where they've been something that has been the light at the end of the tunnel in certain aspects. When you've got things going on, Everton are always there, regardless of how shit they are, regardless if they've actually done something all right, regardless of the players we've got, regardless of Beto or Calvert-Lewin, or having Seamus and Leighton Baines, one of the best left backs you've ever seen in the world. Regardless of all that, Everton are a constant in your life, wherever they are, Premier League to wherever. Everton are a constant in your life, and with Everton comes Goodison. Everton and Goodison go hand in hand, they're entwined. To see them separate, to see them in a different direction, because I know the club, what you do put in the hands of the club with optimism is what they'll end up doing with Goodison, and the legacy that follows from it and things. But obviously the stadium itself is not going to be the way in which Goodison's always been to us, and Everton aren't going to be playing there. That's when they separate and move to Bramley Moor, and all of that stuff will come with it when we get round to August. I think we'll be thinking this in a different direction. But right now it's hard to take, and I think I took more anger out of that 2-2 draw with Ipswich, which was a nothing game, really. Luckily enough, the last half dozen, we've pretty much been safe in the Premier League, probably longer than that. So you're there to be able to cherish Goodison a lot more than if it was a game that was essentially a 6-pointer, and you're thinking, oh, we've got to go and beat Southampton. We do have the luxury of not being able to do that, unlike we have in the past few seasons. So Goodison's looked at, excuse me, in a different light for me, because it's not. It's the Goodison that I want to say goodbye to, not the Goodison that we've seen have to do certain things to keep in the Premier League. And I'm not taking the value away from them, but Goodison shouldn't have got. Goodison didn't deserve to be in the situation it has been when we're still fighting to stay in the division. So therefore, when we're getting to the end of this now, as much as people will say, well, it's a nothing game, and it won't be as emotional as if. Can you imagine imagine the scenario you had if Everton needed to beat Southampton in the last game at Goodison to stay in the
Yeah.
Premier League? Can you imagine that day?
Well, that would have taken away what I'm glad that we're able to do on this next Sunday. It would have taken away the whole, enjoying the ground for the last time because all the focus. I mean, that Bournemouth game. I know I always go back to it, but imagine if you swap that season for the season we're in now, and we've got to beat Bournemouth on the last day. You wouldn't be able to enjoy it. And I think even though there's not necessarily to play for, at least at the very least, we can, enjoy it and appreciate it for the ground it is.
Yeah, I think that's more appropriate. I think that's. I mean, I do feel fortunate we're playing a side that's already relegated and been absolutely abysmal. Probably. Having said that, the Everton that's still always going to be a Goodison, I still think there'll be a couple of people who have a quid or two on Southampton just spoiling it and us being ridiculously poor and them coming and winning 1-0. That'd just be Everton way. And I feel as if there's that sort of wry smile that everyone has when you're thinking about it. People will be going through what's the perfect end to this. What is the way in which we say goodbye to this? The players who coming in, spoken a lot about Graham Sharp, who was back there, wasn't he, at the Ipswich game, which is fantastic to see, and need to speak to him as well. All of that, it feels like there's going to be a culmination of Goodison, which is again what she deserves, what everybody deserves that's been there. The thing that I've taken a lot from is talking to people I don't know, and that's not a lot of people that you speak to when you go to the match. You don't. Yes, you'd have people in and around you. I've sat it's quite an older group of fans who I'm close to at Goodison, and I'll speak to them and say, "Oh, that sort of thing." I think you mentioned it yourself about people in and around you. They're not the kind of person you'll drop a message to the next day and say, "Do you want to go for a pint?" It's not on that level in regards to who I've made to associate with Goodison itself, but each one of them takes their own feelings from everything's unique. It's all unique. People who, unless there's clubs, which there are many these days, obviously, who've moved from an old ground to the new one, I immediately comes to my mind is Arsenal, because it used to remind me a lot of Goodison, the way in which Arsenal was. And Ellen Road, it's coming back really. It's a very, very similar. Villa Park as well is one of my favourite grounds that I go to. All of those at some point are going to have to experience all of this sort of thing, aren't they? And the way we are, you just hope you do it the service that it deserves, which we will undoubtedly think that'll be the case. But also, you need to do something. This sounds so cheesy. You need to do something that does it to you, something that you're going to have the rest of your life, that you never forget about that last day at Goodison, because of how much you've invested into this club. I'm not talking money. I'm talking about emotions. I'm talking about feelings. I'm talking about love and hatred at times that you've put towards Goodison Park. That has to be something that you treasure, what happens on that final day and how you walk away from it. And then look, the sort of the world's your oyster then, isn't it, when you look about what happens after it. But Goodison Park now is the be all and end all for everybody right now, isn't it?
Yeah, I as I said, I think for me, I left on Saturday feeling very tearful. I'm not ashamed to admit that, but not in a way that was I'm depressed, just in a way that I think some people have compared it to when you leave your childhood home, or you have to move away from your home, and you've got all the memories in your house of growing up with your parents and all that sort of stuff. And it's that, but on a different but bigger scale, because it's 30 odd thousand. And I was watching, obviously, Duncan Ferguson's books come out this week, and he's been doing a lot of interviews, and something he said I think was very poignant as well. He just said it's not so much the people who are going now. He said it's family members who've passed on, and I know a lot of people will be feeling that come that final game. It'll be the final time they go to a place where they shared a lot of memories with people who are sadly aren't around anymore. So I think all of those things just hit me, me personally, and I think I wasn't sure how I was going to feel, to be honest, Dave. I knew I was going to be gutted when we left, because I love the place, and I always will.
Yeah.
But I think Saturday just gone gave me an indication of I think what you're right. I think there's not going to be a giant in the house, and I think you put it so eloquently there about how much it means to people and how much it's going to be for all of us to take everything we can from it. And I'm sure there'll be people there staying there as long as they can, and they'll have to turf them out at the end of the
Yeah,
evening. So I'm sure
yeah.
there'll be people there despite.
Someone will chain themselves to something. So it'll
Yeah,
happen.
despite it being
the oil fella will be in there, mate, honestly.
I think despite it being the early kickoff it is, I think there'll be people in there till the evening time. So yeah, it's going to be very, very emotional. I think I'm certainly bookmarking and liking every single tweet and Goodison video or photograph that's coming out at the minute, and also as well, I noticed so many people just videoing and taking pictures of the ground as much as they could, and just getting everything they could possible to keep their memories alive forever. So yeah, it's going to be a tough one. I am going to move on though, Dave, from it being an emotional conversation to something what I've got to ask you, because it's non-Everton related. The game last night, Inter and Barcelona. I mean, I know we don't often change tact and discuss things that are non-Everton related, but I was watching that last night, Dave, and it was a throwback for me, because I think you lads had a discussion as well on Blue Monday a couple of weeks back off the back of Gary Neville's comments about how the Premier League, or certain teams in the Premier League, it's becoming very robotic, very same, and Guardiola's being criticised the last couple of weeks for the way his style is being incorporated by everyone in the country, and all games are the same. You either counter-attack or you keep the ball, and the City game the other week, for instance, I mean, that just turned into a bit of a boring game just because they just ground us down with the constant passing and possession. And I watched that game last night, and it was a reminder for me why I love football in the first place. It was a wonderful game, wasn't it? And a wonderful two legs. And I wish them two teams were in the final as opposed to the semi.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right there. But I haven't said that. I think we're obviously recording this before PSG and Arsenal. I'm presuming PSG go through. That's mouth-watering, that what we're going to go and see in that as well. If it's anything like what we saw in that semi-final with Inter and Barca there. It's a good segue you've made through that as well there, talking about Goodison and throwbacks and the way we used to play at Goodison. This one though, I don't think it came by. I don't think it came by on purpose from these two managers. I don't think they've got into that and thought, let's go gun ho here, and everybody just try and it become basketball like at times, didn't it? Which I'm sure many purists would say, well, the defenses have been absolutely awful here. It was full of quality, it was full of pace, it was full of emotion as well. Getting into an emotional chat here, but it felt like you had a lot of players there who were throwing everything they had at getting through that game. The massive incident for me came when I thought Barca should have been given that penalty, which was right on the edge of the box, and I thought if that's it, then that's over. Still, it turned again. It turned one way, it turned another way. It was a magical game of football to watch there. That'll be one that's put in the archives as one of the very best. And it had me thinking as well, like I think you just hinted at it, how often do you see games like that these days? I'm not just talking about the way in which they play, I'm talking about the actual results, the emotion of that, how dramatic that is towards the end there. Yes, we had the Tarkovsky 2-2 in the derby there, and probably preaching to the wrong people by saying that's nowhere near like this, but it wasn't. This game had everything that you don't necessarily see as the regular these days. I think, but you think of Champions League games that have gone down in the past as well. There aren't ones that come to my mind that go anywhere near this. Yes, you'll have Liverpool listeners, because I know there's many of them who listen to us talking about their Barcelona game, and they'll be talking about the anniversaries coming sooner. That would disaster what happened when they went and won it.
Istanbul, yeah.
Yeah, that's I don't know any of anyway. I don't really care, but all that sort of emotion there. I think you've worded it perfectly there. This game was just it was a pleasure to watch. It was something that you wish you could be assured that it happens when you watch a game of footy. Otherwise, like some games you watch that are so. You mentioned it so right when City came to Goodison, and the only thing I disagree with you here is about Guardiola. Guardiola's set up football. The way in which he's gone through his managerial career, obviously with Barcelona, in which it started. And then when he went to Bayern, everything he put his paw onto is what people try to repeat. It's what people have tried to do themselves. It's not often that people have got close to it, or being able to put that sort of dynasty
And
on
that's
that.
the issue, Dave. That's the issue with it,
Yeah,
because I watch League Two clubs trying to play it out from the back,
yeah,
and I'm watching it going, your centre half is not technically good enough
yeah.
to
Well,
do that.
yeah, and that's
And
right.
that's the issue for me. It sounds like I'm having a dig at Guardiola. I'm absolutely not, because I mean that 09 Barcelona team, for instance, is rightly heralded as probably the greatest ever.
Yeah,
And his Man City teams down the years have played some incredible stuff and reaching 100 points and that sort of thing. And it sounds like I'm criticising him. I'm really not. I think you've just made my point for me, if you like. It's the fact that everyone's tried to replicate it. And I think there is room in football for teams to have an identity and play a certain way. And for me, that's what I watched last night. I mean, the final points I was going to make on it was, I'll so often have football on in the background and not really be paying too much attention. And I'll be on my phone, or I'll be on the iPad, or I'll be messaging someone, or I'll be doing whatever. And I'm not really paying too much attention to what's going on. That game last night, I sat and I did not want it to end. And I didn't have my phone near me. I didn't go. I was fuming. I had to go to the toilet because I'm going to miss something here. And I think for me, that was what it reminded me, and if you like, of being when I was a kid and when football wasn't as saturated as it was now, and I just watched everything I possibly could, and I was so obsessed with it and so enamored with it, and that to me last night just reminded me again, like I said earlier, of why I love football. And I think you hope that Everton I always think of being, and I relate this to Everton, coming back to it, Everton have always been on the best or at the best when we're flying into tackles and we're playing quick foot. No one likes us. If we played like City did the other week, we get booed off the park, wouldn't we?
Yeah.
Everton fans wanted to get it forward quick and play nice football when we get it in attacking areas. And
well, it was Martinez. That Martinez couple of years just showed you that was the epitome of what Everton fans don't like. Yet what he was trying to do is exactly what Guardiola ended up, well, a legend and one of the greatest managers that there's ever been. You're absolutely right. I think it's horses for the courses, really, isn't it? Because the way in which we've been at our best and our most successful and our happiest as fans has been exactly what you've said there. It hasn't been, because we admire watching it, like you've just said there. I didn't want to be turned away from that game. I didn't want somebody to close my eyes watching that game. But you're watching that game out of pure enjoyment of football it's for the purist watching that game of how you want to see a game played. That isn't yourself. There's another way. And this is the thing, just going back to Guardiola there, that you made me think about, was he's one of the best managers there's ever been. I think that's it's in dispute. You can't dispute that. But the next challenge for him to put himself at the top of that list is if you can change that. If you're able to find, because sides have finally got onto this. We were one of them, really, aside from the scoreline, and obviously it's the most important thing. But the way Everton played against them, you're able to nullify what they've done for a long time. That's why they've been so far away from getting involved in the Premier League title race. So it'll be really interesting what they do in the summer. But that's the other side of it. What you're seeing, the way in which they play here, it'll show you how good Guardiola is if you see them able to change that. Because they've been so successful playing the same way in one system. Now they have to change that. And that's where it's massively interesting here. With what Liverpool have done, which the criticism towards Slot would be, well, he's just inherited Klopp's side. I think there's plenty of nuances that he's added to that squad there, which have made them so successful this season. If you're taking the Everton hat off for a second, and they need that's why it's fascinating to me what happens in the Premier League going forward now. Obviously on top of ourselves, who are our priorities, and that game again. If everybody aims to play like that, then that's what you want to see of football. That's what you want to be paying to go to Bramley Moore, regardless of what you think Everton's greatest. And I think to add a note to that as well is, if you're getting more sides playing like that, you have to go a different way about beating them yourself. Everton, most sides are taking 0-0 draw or a 1-1 draw at home to Manchester City. Of course they would. But why is that? Because they don't play like Manchester City. They don't have the players to play like Manchester City. So, like you've said there, I think the excellent point you made there is you're watching games from like a League Two or non-league game, and you're thinking, "Wow, why is their why is their manager got everyone sort of playing it out of the back forward and knocking it forward and back from the goalkeeper? Why on earth is that happening when that's not what they're capable of doing?" Um, that's essentially what you want to see is somebody who likes football the way in which you do so much. And I think that's why, in many ways, Dice was overly criticised, results to a side, and yet Martinez was eventually criticised for being the opposite side of it. So I think it's really
Yeah.
interesting how much as fans we all sort of contradict ourselves about the football that you want to see.
Yeah, as I say, I loved that game last night, and I think football could learn a lot, and a lot of managers could learn a lot from how them two teams went about themselves last night. So yeah, hopefully it'll be a fantastic final. And as you said, as we record, it'll either be Arsenal or PSG, and I think whoever it is, it'll make for a very good, interesting contest for the Champions League. One I'll be watching, which in the last couple of years, I have to say, I've not really been particularly bothered by. Finally, then, Dave, just as we finish up here. Looking ahead to the weekend, it's another away trip down to Fulham. Great away ground for fans to visit. Lovely area, lovely pubs and everything all down there. A lot of the favourites, or one of the favourites, sorry, for Evertonians who go down there. And we face our old manager in Marco Silva, who I think again's punched above his weight really a little bit with Fulham this year. I think they've had games where they've played really, really well. Probably a little bit disappointed with how some of the form recently has gone. But it'll be a tough test. It'll be a tough game. And I think last week Moyes experimented to a degree with his starting 11. Some of it worked, some of it didn't. How do you see the team selection going? And also, what would you go with? And how do you see the game itself going?
Well, these are quite a free-flowing side there, which is another nice segue that we've moved on to. I think what we were saying before about the Champions League side. By no means a Fulham a Champions League side, but they are headed in the right direction and play some really good football to watch. And I feel as if they're the type of side that can hit you hard unless you're quite structured against them. So I don't think you're going to see a free flowing Everton performance against them. I'd love to do that because remember the time when we went and played them in the FA Cup final the week before the FA Cup final, and it was a cracking game we played down at Fulham. I think Osman scored a couple of goals there and blistered that day. One of the best because, like you say, there it's a lovely place to go to as an away match. And yeah, I mean, they're still in the fight for the European position as well there. So, I think the motivation is going to be key for Moyes to try and get a result out of this. If you're going in there with thinking, well, Calvert-Lewin's fit, I'd start him ahead of Beto. I think you've got these final two games where I wouldn't go as far as saying, well, the decision's going to be made based on 2 games of football there, but there's a chance for him there to remind us of what he can actually do. I think that's important for us as fans, to get more of us behind his back. Behind his shoulders, sort of trying to get him towards still wanting to stay at Everton and vice versa. Everton still liking him and Moyes still liking him. I mean, I think we started off with a bit of a debate about that where it feels as if it's edging towards he's going to stay. I'm not so sure. I think if there's an offer in there, or if there's another club in there, I think Calvert-Lewin would want to leave Everton if there's an offer there on the plate for him. Similar to Decore's come out with some words as well that we didn't go over. He's been saying something about his offers.
I only read this I've only read this in the last hour. It was apparently on the Ben Foster podcast, which I'm sure is a fantastic listen. And if you don't think I'm being sarcastic there, then don't feel you. But apparently he said that Everton haven't spoken. I'm paraphrasing, but Everton haven't spoken to him, and he's not going to approach them because he's had other offers on the table. Now, whether his comments have been taken out of context or whatever, I don't know. I think we were all agreed after that Forest game when he scored the winner that we'd be interested in maybe, or us as fans would be interested on some sort of deal with reduced terms. But I think, if he's maybe touting the idea of someone else coming in for him, I think he's potentially another one that we need to, send our best wishes to, because he has scored some massive goals in our, in our recent history. But if we want to, like we were saying about Beto earlier, if we want to move on as a club, I think he's the type of player now that we need to bypass, really.
Well, this is the point that I'm getting to here, sort of going in a roundabout way to playing away at Fulham, and of course the last two with the Southampton and Newcastle games. we're playing most of the side are going to be lads that out of contract within 90, 180 minutes of playing for Everton again. What does Moyes see about that? What does he think about this? Will performances then alter his decision and the club's decision? I would guess no, because no one's going to go over 3 games and say, yeah, we're going to ask him to stay when we weren't going to, because he's gone and played great in the last 3 games, like a Decore, for instance, or maybe a Lindstrom. You go and get him on loan. They're far beyond that. I'm pretty sure. Well, I'd hope all decisions have already been made about these players. So going there, just going back to what I was saying, you go into a side there that played really good football. They've got a really good midfield. They've got, I always get his name wrong. Smith Rowe. You've got him, who's that's probably the right move he ever took, that, because it was he was massively well thought of at Arsenal. Didn't quite work for him. He's gone to somewhere where he's a bit of a workhorse. Good player. Muniz, who they've got up front as well. We're looking at a side here that's just extremely efficient. It's what I think that Marco Silva have wanted to see in a prolonged stay at Everton. Because I remember when he first came in, he was quite pragmatic. It was decent football to watch. That's what he's gone and done there. Normally, these are all free hits, aren't they? And the away ones are particularly because it's not Goodison, to put it mildly. So I'd take a draw if it mattered. I'd like to see us go there and actually have a go to go toe to toe with the side that have had a really good positive season there. We're up at old mate Iwobi's there. Traore, who I've liked watching him so much, but probably because he's not a footballer. he's just a sprinter. I think he's done like the 100 meters in 10 seconds or something like that. Although I've seen a couple of times where he's done some amazing things. He started his career at Barcelona as well, didn't he? There's nothing there. There's nothing soft about that about him. So they've got a side, they've got a squad that are capable, and you've seen them. He did it against the champs. He did it against Liverpool just a few weeks ago. Tore them apart when they went to Craven Cottage. So I would like to see us line up the 2 Ghaners in midfield. I think you're going to see Patterson again at right back. Mikalenko, standard back 4. O'Brien and Branthwaite's the main thing I want to see again. Didn't sort of fill me with optimism watching them against Ipswich, despite the fact that
listening to Matt and Paddy previous week about them two, and Paddy and Matt were both saying about how Moyes was really on it with O'Brien. He was out of position a couple of times for his liking, and I actually thought they both did well against Chelsea. But there was that error, I think, for the second goal against Ipswich, which I think O'Brien should probably stop. And there's a little question mark there about them too. I think we'd all like the idea of them being our, permanent or long-term centre-back partnership. But I think there's a little question there about O'Brien at centre-back. He's not done badly in my book, but he's not exactly covered himself in glory like he has been doing at right-back recently. So that's an interesting one with them too, isn't it?
Yeah, and it has the effect on the other one. Of course it does. You're playing as a partnership. If one of them plays poor, the other one goes with him, really, don't they? We can't sit there and say, well, he was woeful and the other one was fantastic. That's not the way it works. Excuse me. And I'd like to see that again. I want to see what they can do. Look, it's far too late to be able to talk about, well, they're the essential back 2. But if they go and have 3 good games there, it's another food for thought. If we're keeping Branthwaite as well, that's going to be a massive issue across the summer, which is going to do our heads in all the time, isn't it? Given how many links he's going to have and how many different prices are going to be thrown towards him and what the club can do. And it's already given me a bit of a headache, to be honest with you, so I shouldn't have mentioned it. And then, I'd like to see Calvert-Lewin. We've seen what Beto's done. We know what Beto can do. He was being poor in the last couple. I know he scored his goal, but a bit anonymous at times. Going back a little bit to what he was like when we first saw him. I'd like to see Calvert-Lewin come in and give it his best for the last couple of games. And then it'll show us a real indication if that's what he wants to do, if he wants to stay. You'll see him going in and throwing everything at this because he's been out injured. He wants to prove people wrong as well. I'm sure he does. because there's so many Blues, I'd say more Blues than less, who don't want him at the football club. So he's got to go and fight that. He's got to use that, but perhaps the sort of motivation that he needs going in there. And then it was interesting what we played against Ipswich. It was something that I really wanted to see, with McNeil, Alcaraz, and Ndiaye being three that are in and around whoever we play up front. That, with Calvert-Lewin in front of them, is something that is a little bit more mouthwatering to me.
I'd like to see that trio being given another go.
Exactly,
I'd like to see them
what I
go.
really like about it, there's such a versatility in that front three. They can move in and around each other. Alcaraz is more sort of structured than the other two, I would suggest, because we've seen McNeil, sort of float across there, and Ndiaye can certainly do the same as well. You can cause the opposition a real nightmare seeing those three in and amongst each other. I want to see more of that. I want to see what they've got. And again, there's another place there. You've got a lad that I think he essentially wants to come to the football club. I thought for a while that Moyes isn't for Moyes. Alcaraz, that is. I still think that's the case. I think that if you're told now to David Moyes, sign him or not, I think he'd lean towards not, which I think many of our fans are quite angry about that, and would be a bit gutted if you don't go and get a lad for around 12 to 16 million pound, whatever it is. That's a bargain in this stage football, isn't it? And we know he can play. We know he's got the talent.
Got the assist for Beto, didn't he, on Saturday?
Exactly. Yeah, he did the same, didn't he? Against who did he do it against?
Palace,
it was Palace, wasn't it? And he's got all the tools right there. You just got to put him in the right position to get the best out of him there. So that's why I'd like to see him in sort of that three that'd be just behind the striker. So I'd like to see that go again. And Ndiaye as well. He had his injury issues, been a little bit quiet, hasn't he? But he's safe because he's our player.
Yeah.
and McNeil as well. So yeah, just sort of eyeing up the issues that we've got that we need to look at a little bit closer and think, yeah, okay, we're sticking with this, we're going with this. Decisions you've already made. Is there someone that's gonna stick their head out to the parapet and say, yeah, I want to change my direction that I'm going in with Moyes? Like, just again, you're gonna give him another contract. I'd be astounded if we didn't. But there are others I still think who can fight their position if they want to stay at Everton.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting one. I would like to see, maybe his hand will be forced with people out or whatever, but I would like to see a similar side be given a go. And hopefully Everton can put in one of them performances like we've seen on the road sometimes in the last couple of years. We've actually done relatively well away from home. When obviously we've still got a long way to go before we're winning multiple games away from home. But
yeah,
if that Forest game's anything to go by, then hopefully we can play like that, and there'll be plenty to look forward to. So we'll leave it there anyway. My thanks to Dave for joining me tonight on Weekly, and an emotional chat at times, and a very in-depth chat that we've had there. And coming up over the weekend, obviously we'll have all your content that you need. We'll be back with a post-match on Saturday after the Fulham game. The lads will be back on Monday with Blue Monday, Les, Roger and Dave as well. And then, is Matt still away next week for Byline? I thought Alan deputised brilliantly for him, but is Matt still away next week, do you know?
No, he's back with vengeance. He's
back.
He's coming home from his spell away, his well-earned holiday. So yeah, he's
well-earned holiday after his marathon effort. So yeah, the lads will be back with the Byline. But thank you once again for listening to us. And obviously we're building up to that final game at Southampton, and there'll be plenty of content leading up to that final game. So make sure you keep us ears listening to us, however you get us, whether that be on Spotify, whether that be on iTunes, or wherever you get your podcasts. And don't forget to like and subscribe us on YouTube as well. Once again, my thanks to Dave. That's been your Weekly Up the Toffees.